but certainly that it's done differently, and it can get some different results. Tell me your view of that.
I agree with you. I think I don't think I appreciated our system any more than I have seeing a system like Italy's when it's been abused. I don't think if this trial had occurred in Rome, for instance, the abuse of this court would have occurred because there would have been more eyes on it and people would have been watching it. But the right to keep from having to incriminate yourself, the right to confront your accusers, the right to look at evidence against you. These things are immense. And if you don't have those, if you don't have a competent defense, then things like the Amanda Knox thing happen. You have people who are convicted on the flimsiest of evidence, and then it takes years to clear your name. I've got to tell you, I did 25 years in the FBI, and I can tell you how many times I was frustrated by not being able to put evidence in that I thought was good. I cannot tell you how many times I was frustrated with the defense attorney. Seeing what I've seen now makes me appreciate those defense attorneys, makes me appreciate the rules of evidence. And I kind of wish that everybody at the FBI Academy could go through and see a case like this before they went into the field and got the other opinion.
Go ahead, Mr. Raywall. You look like you want to say something.
No.
You don't want to say anything? No. I have a question. Okay. We're halfway into the show, and I know the judge has done a disclaimer. So I want to know, staying focused on the topic here, so why did you get fired? Because on our last show, what we were talking about was the fact that, and yes, I'm a mother, and my problem with this was I don't believe this girl should be in prison for 26 years. I don't believe that she murdered this poor girl, Meg, and you were talking about the evidence and the knife, and we were talking about these different characters. So. And you also said at the time that you changed your opinion because your wife told you to pay attention. So did the wife get you fired?
No, if you're watching the show, you didn't get me fired. What happened is being law enforcement, I give the benefit of the doubt to law enforcement people. I heard the press. I heard that she had been, I heard the statements of evidence against her, which sounded good, but later on have fallen apart. And so my wife asked me to look at it. And I said, when did you stop being an FBI wife? When did you start believing people when they say they're innocent? And I looked at the case and I got evidence and I obtained things from overseas. And it was just one of those horrific, life-changing events where you say, oh my gosh, this is wrong. She's not guilty. And so that's what brought me into it. And about that time, I talked to Pepperdine about it because my job, I was hired at Pepperdine to protect students overseas. And we had an Italian program, or they have an Italian program.
Can I ask you this? How were you protecting students overseas?
We were setting up procedures. We were looking ahead to possible problems that we might have in these countries. We were looking at political situations, terrorism situations. We were educating the students. We were making contacts with the State Department, with local police in those areas. We were doing everything we could to make sure that the students, when they got over there, were well versed in what they should do, what they shouldn't do, and taught about Italian law. For instance, that if you get arrested for DUI, they could hold you for a year if they felt like it, legally. So those were the things we were doing. And because Amanda Knox was an American on a Washington State or a University of Washington program, she was just 100 miles from our students. And something horrible had happened to her, and I felt an involvement. I also have a daughter her age. I felt something compelling me to do something about what I saw to be wrong. I talked to Pepperdine about it, and they said, they gave me permission in writing, go for it. Said they admired what I was doing. And then about 6 months later, I started appearing on television on the case and criticizing the Italian prosecutors. And Pepperdine said that could hurt our Italian program.
Okay.
Politically, we could lose. We could lose with the Italians.
Okay.
And I told them that I'm involved in this case now. You gave me permission. I can't back down without people thinking the wrong thing and hurting Amanda Knox's case. And so they told me I had to stop anyway. And I told them I couldn't do that. And they told me that they would fire me if I didn't. And I said, I understand that, but I don't think that's right. They asked me to resign and offered to pay me $26,000 if I would resign. And I told them I couldn't in good conscience do that. And at that point, they fired me.
I guess your question, do you think that American students who are matriculating abroad appreciate the differences and the rights that we have here in the United States versus what they may face abroad? I mean,
that is such a good question. And no, they don't. I think that everybody, all the foreign students going over, and I love the foreign students. I loved my job. But I think they think the back page of their passport is the Bill of Rights. You don't bring that with you.
Right.
And if you think that you're going to have the same protections because you're an American overseas, you're wrong. You have the same protection of the citizens of the country you're in. So if you have if you go to a country that has the death penalty for cocaine, you have the death penalty for cocaine. You're not an American anymore. You're really their citizen. But that's what we tried to give these students an idea of what the laws were and where they were going.
One of the surprising things is that how almost every university now has a program overseas. And 10 years ago, that was not the case. And so every one of our kids or grandkids are going to, if they go to college, they're going to be overseas at some time on some particular program. And so this stuff is critical. And it was surprising to me that Pepperdine backed away from what clearly was an abuse of the process and stopped supporting Steve. And it still baffles me on that whole issue in terms of Pepperdine's decision.
And I want to add here, I really do like Pepperdine University. Their law school has a program where they send law students over to third world countries to get involved in the legal system for people who are improperly accused. Pepperdine's very much involved in this. It's just that in some administrators' minds, they felt that it was more important not to risk a problem with the Italian government in this one case. And I felt like they were abandoning a girl they should have been protecting.
Now, you didn't like my little comments on the stuff I read off the internet.
But I like you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I like you too. I'm still impressed that you got involved with this because of your wife. But anyway, and Murvet, you travel all over. Do you ever get in any problems with your husband?
Thank goodness.
No. Okay. But okay, like I said, I don't believe that she murdered this person. I don't believe she should be in jail for 26 years. I think it's a very, very sad thing. Some of the stuff that I read, whether it was tainted or not from her father, if something happened to my child, I would probably taint any and everything. I'd be trying to rip somebody's heart out. I wouldn't really care. But the way she was killed, and the fact that you said there was a blanket or something pulled over her,
A duvet.
and just the fact that I feel that there was somebody in there with her, the killer. I don't know if these kids got involved in a situation and they just couldn't stop. So I just think it's a very, very sad thing, and my heart does go out to her parents. I'm sorry.
As does mine.
I'm sorry.
The simple facts, though, are the window was broken, a known burglar was, his DNA, his bloody handprints in the victim's blood were all over the room. He was known to carry a knife, and his DNA was found on the victim and inside the victim. Amanda had no motive. Amanda's boyfriend had no motive. They didn't know this man. And I understand that both sides have made some errors on this, but I think this is the beauty of the American court system, to take all these disparate ideas and all these confusing rumors and all these the innuendo and make sense of it. And I think that's what the U.S. courts do so well. And there are people out there on the internet that are similar to that church that protests the funerals for the soldiers. They come out and protest because they're going to a bad place because they were soldiers. You can't figure out the hatred of people like that.
I didn't read that article.
Oh, there are people out there who do that, unfortunately. And the people who hate Amanda are similar to that. They're bringing up all sorts of ridiculous arguments in this, and the problem is it's hard to tell what's right and what's wrong.
Well, can I ask you a question? So
Yes,
she was convicted.
Yes, sir.
So just from a next step perspective, how does the appellate process in Italy in terms of criminal cases compare to the appellate process in the United States?
I kind of like their appellate process,
Okay.
to tell you the honest truth.
Tell me the distinctions.
The distinction is, in the American appellate process, and I'm not telling you something you don't know very well.
Well, tell our audience that.
The facts of the case are really not gone into in the American court system. What you're looking for, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, is errors by the original court.
Well, the court, an appellate court typically does not retry a case.
That's correct.
What they'll do is determine, and it may be a de novo review
Yes, sir.
of all the rulings, or they may simply take a particular legal issue, and you have an appellate court consisting of more than one appellate judges, and then you have an advocacy system where you come in and the attorneys argue
Yes.
their relative positions, whether it's interpretation of a statute or whether there was some reversible error or something that would send a criminal case back for what we call remand and then a retrial, basically. Or you simply find that it's reversal.
Yes, sir.
But I'm wondering, do they go into the facts and do new
Yes.
fact findings?
And in the Italian appellate system,
Oh, and I'm sorry. We are getting the wrap it up sign.
You got
so
it.
if you want to hear the answer to this question, you'll have to tune in next week on From the Halls of Justice, and that way we can continue. Judge Cunningham, the third, thank you so much for being here. Murvet, our world traveler and producer. Steve Moore, our former FBI agent and advocate for Who's Right, and Mr. Bill Raywall, the person that I would contact if I was in trouble.
and I did.
Okay. Thank you for joining us on From the Halls of Justice, and we'll see you next week. Murvet, you'll be here?
Yes, of course I will.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us.